Hello. Welcome to our panel.
I'm Emily Sanderson. I'm Brandon's wife and business partner, and I'm here to, I have some questions in case these guys run out of things to say, which probably won't happen, but just in case.
And I'm Brandon.
And I'm Barbara.
Is this all in English?
Yes,
Yeah?
this is all
Okay.
English.
All right.
Although, if someone has a question that needs to be translated, I hablo un poquito de español. You want me to start with the question? Okay, the first question I have for these two illustrious authors is, if you could instantly become the best writer you could possibly be, but had to give up one of your 5 senses, sight, smell, taste, touch, or hearing, to do it, would you do it? And which one would you choose to give up?
Wow. Okay, so I can become the best author ever.
Your best author self.
My best author self. Oh, that's different. And what would I give up? I don't think I'd do it. I think the senses are too vital to writing stories. Plus, I've read too many fantasy stories like this, and it never goes well. You're never happy you took this deal.
Yeah, I would agree with Brandon, with the exception of if I had to make that choice, it would be taste, because I have a list of food allergies a yard long. I have a list of foods that I need to stay away from. So in spite of the fact that I have dear friends who are phenomenal cooks, I think it would be taste, because that would be there's a lot of things that I haven't tasted in a long time.
Okay.
Interesting answer. All right, here's another one that's kind of more career-ish. If you didn't write, what would you do for work?
Ooh, do you want to start this one?
Yes. If I did not write, I would probably be a history teacher, a history professor. I was a history professor for almost 20 years, was an adjunct professor. You know, if you're, unless you're Brandon Sanderson, you generally cannot make a complete living as a writer. So I've always had gig jobs. And for the past, I retired from teaching about 2 years ago, but I was a history teacher at a local community college. I was an adjunct, it was part-time. And so that is what I am apparently suited for.
Before I was a writer, I worked at a hotel, and that's the only productive job I've ever had. I was the front desk clerk, like the night shift, graveyard shift, because I figured I could write books while I was at work. And they were okay with that because the guy before me just went and slept on the couch. So they figured if you're writing books, at least you'll be there for people to come get you if they need towels or whatever. And I wrote a bunch of books on that front desk computer, saving it to floppy disk. And that's, like I said, the only productive thing I've ever done in my life. So what would I do if I couldn't write, if I weren't a writer? Probably die. I probably wouldn't be able, but I do like teaching. But the problem is, the only thing I'm suited to teach is creative writing. And if I weren't a writer, I probably wouldn't be a very good creative writing teacher.
I attempted to get a job as a creative writing teacher, and the administration of the college told me, oh, you don't have an MFA. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, I've published 60 books. Well, you don't have an MFA, and so we can't hire you as a creative writing teacher. And even if we could hire you as an English teacher, the tenured full-time professors teach creative writing because it's more fun. And I'm thinking, you have people who want to learn to write, and instead of having a course taught by someone who has published 60 books, you're going to have them taught by an academic because it's more fun for him.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, how ghastly stupid of me, I forgot to get an MFA. I studied history, and they said, oh, you want to teach history? Yes.
It is, I mean, we're laughing, but it is a serious problem with American academics. I was originally a biochemistry major, and I changed to English after I finally decided I'm going to be a writer. And bless my professors, they barely knew what they were doing, right? Like, they were these people who, you know, their schooling was in Shakespeare, and they were trying to teach people how to write in the contemporary writing world. And I don't know if I would have made it if the school hadn't relented and hired one professional writer adjunct to teach one class that they could put all the fantasy nerds in, so the fantasy nerds would stop bothering the other professors. And I took that class, and I learned more in 1 year than the rest of my degree combined. It was Dave Farland/Wolverton. I don't know if you ever met him.
No.
Yeah, he was a mid-list writer, great guy, great writer, mid-list fantasy writer.
And it was a gig job, wasn't it?
Yep. He got paid just a tiny bit of money for it, but man, I learned so much from that guy.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you. I know it will vary based on the book, but how long on average does it take you to write a book? And this is not researching, not outlining. This is first word of first draft to last word of first draft.
Okay. Do you have like a daily word count that you shoot for?
Not really.
Okay, yeah, you just kind of
But
vibe it.
That, to me, that's like asking, do you have a daily sex count the first week of your honeymoon?
I have a spreadsheet that I keep.
About writing.
I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
I do about 2,000 to 2,500 words a day when I'm actually writing. And I found it takes me about half as long as the first draft to kind of do all the editing combined. And so it's by word count for me. If I'm writing a 100,000 word book, we're looking at 50 writing days. I get about 3 of those a week on average once you take out touring and all this stuff. So you can do that math, and then another 25, 25 days doesn't sound like enough, but I do about 7 to 10,000 words per revision draft day. And so at 100,000 words, it's like 10 days for the first draft, 10 days for the next draft, maybe another 10 for a following draft. If I'm lucky and I don't need any more revisions, that's where I am.
Can you tell he was raised by an accountant?
I was. Yeah. What about you?
Generally, for the past several years, I will turn in 2 outlines to the publisher, and 2 outlines to the publisher, and I publish like 2 books. So it works out to about a book every 9 months, 3 books every 2 years. And they give me the word count. They say, you know, this is for an 80,000 word novel or a 90,000 word novel. And I have 9 months to do it in. And that's from first word to, well, the first draft is always the hardest. The first draft is, that's the heavy work. And then the rest, there's a very heavy revision draft after that, and the rest is just polishing. Sometimes, if I'm slow on the first draft, I get a little cramped for time on the further revisions, but I have an excellent editor who comes back and says, I thought her hair was red.
Yeah. You'd be surprised at how often we forget these things. It's
well,
a little
you get
embarrassing.
Too close to it. You
Yeah.
get too close to it.
Well, what I always do, my problem is, I remember things I had in the first draft better than things I made change in revision. Years later, I'll be writing and I'll call someone by the name from the first draft of the first book that I changed 10 years ago, but my fingers still type that first. It's so weird.
Yeah, and then there's also the issue that when you're on book 20 of a series that's been running for 20 years, sometimes you forget what the police chief's assistant's name is, you know, and you don't know which book that you happen to mention that in.
I'm lucky enough that I just finally was able to just hire a person whose whole job is for me to say, hey, Karen, what was the police chief's assistant's name? And she emails me back, it's this. Here's the description. So, yeah.
What did you do with your first advance? Do you remember?
Oh, I do.
My first advance, see, what happened was I turned in the manuscript of Time at the Dark, which was a 1-volume. My editor told me we want a 3-volume. Oh, good, that's, you know, extra money. Signed the contract on a Friday afternoon, mailed it back to the editor. Went with my karate dojo to another state to compete in a tournament. Came back on Sunday, still slightly hungover. Went into work Monday, still slightly hungover. And was confronted by the fact that there was a reduction in force and they were like firing most of the department. So I thought, I've just signed a contract for a fantasy trilogy and I'm going to get what appeared to me then to be a great deal of money. And so everybody else in the department, they just went white. They were just horrified, of course, because they'd lost their jobs. And I'm sitting there putting my stuff in a cardboard box. Yes. So what I did with my first draft was support myself for a couple of months. And bought a pair of boots at the Renaissance Fair.
I was in a master's program for creative writing, not an MFA. My school didn't have the F, it was just an MA. To this day, I'm a little salty about that. They added an MFA like 3 years after I graduated. If you don't know, MFA is this is a Master's of Fine Arts rather than just a Master of Arts. And all the schools want the fine part of it. So I'm a master, but I'm not a fine master, right? And so I was doing this. This was mostly a stalling tactic because my parents kept calling me and being like, so, career? And I'm like, student, you know. And I was learning a lot from the other students and not a lot from the professors. And I remember the day I got the call. My first class was my theory class, which is like the worst of the most academic classes, right? It's the one you go into and I won't bore you because it's kind of boring. But I walked in and the professor, I love it, the professor said, so did anything happen to anyone over the weekend? And I said, I got a book deal. And he looked at me. He's like, you're a grad student, you don't get book deals. And he's like, for money? And I said, yeah, $5,000. And yeah, it's $5,000, my first advance, blew their minds. He said to me, well, I guess we know what your master's thesis is, because you have a published novel. And I'm like, well, I didn't even write it when I wrote it during my undergrad. It's taken years to get published. He's like, no matter, this is Elantris. It is now your master's thesis. Which was really fun because they decided that would be my thesis. So when I walked in to defend, I plopped the published book down and I pointed at it and they thumbs me up and my defense was 5 minutes. Right? It was pretty cool.
And I bet that professor had never had a book published.
He had never had a book published. He had, done articles in journals and things like that. So I got this $5,000 and I bought a sports car. It was not a very new sports car because I was at least, I was raised by an accountant, so I was responsible enough to know that, but it was a car that, like this $5,000 I put down on it, and it was like half the price of the car. And I had that sports car well into our marriage till eventually we sold it because I just was never driving it, because when you have 3 kids, you don't have many opportunities to drive the sports car. It was only a 2-seater, so yeah.
But I was very impressed when he pulled up on our first date with this sports car.
Yeah. It was a convertible. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's a good advance. Okay, this one's a little bit more serious, but I want to know how you deal with basing your characters on real people. I know sometimes, I'm sure, well, I know from experience that writers can't help putting bits of people they know into their characters, and sometimes it's a cameo, sometimes it's not. But tell me, how do you do that? Do you think about it? Does it just happen? Do you tell them they've become a part of your book?
Ooh, that last part, sometimes I tell them, sometimes I don't. It depends on what kind of character they are. A lot of times I'm looking for a conflict. I'm looking to meet someone who has an interesting conflict, and then I say, ooh, that's an interesting, I have friends in the military who are also doctors, military doctors. And I'm like, that's so interesting. You're both trained to kill and to heal at the same time. There's a conflict. Let me explore what it is to be a healer who is trained to kill. I like things like that. So I often am not, it's not like a one-to-one, this person is this person. It's this person inspired me with a conflict that I developed into this character.
I have one of the characters in my very long-running mystery series is based on my late husband. Very charming, good for nothing.
Who's the character?
Oh, Hannibal.
Oh, okay.
Hannibal is George.
Oh, okay, okay.
Very charming, good for nothing. Other characters I take. One of my dear friends, before we both became very old, extremely beautiful woman who did not believe she was beautiful. And so she would spend forever putting on her damn makeup when we want to go someplace. She was always like 3 hours late because she did not believe that she was beautiful. And so I've used that characteristic. In several of my books, I use a man who was my sweetheart for many years, a dear, responsible fellow, who was a cop, or who was a probation officer. And so I would, whenever I need a cop or I need a probation officer, frequently it's my dear friend Alan. The straight across transfer, I wrote a book called The Bride of the Rat God, which was about a silent film starlet who was being pursued by a giant Manchurian rat demon who was only visible to her 3 Pekingeses. And I used my little Pekingeses as the models for her 3 little magical Pekingeses who were basically trained as demon catchers. And I did this because I wanted them to live forever. And that was 35 years ago, and they live forever. And every one of my friends who has read that book says, you got them exactly right. They had 3 very different personalities, and going, okay, I've succeeded in reaching into the time stream and pulling them out.
I'm going to have to read that book now.
It's pretty good.
It's really silly.
I love silly. What makes it difficult for you to write? Writing Kryptonite.
plumbing contractors jackhammering the floor.
Yeah, being on tour. It's a little hard. I didn't, I got like 250 words yesterday. Of my normal 2,000. When I'm out, I love you guys. That's why I'm here. But it is not, this is why I can't tour as much as people would like me to. Otherwise, there would be no books. It is one of the hardest things. Is like when I'm kind of emotionally worn out by talking and interacting and all of these things, it makes it difficult to write. Being physically worn out is okay. Mentally worn out is hard.
I guess before I was born, when they, between incarnations, they give you the form to fill out and you write down what you want.
Is that how it works? Okay.
Yeah. And I guess I wrote down, what do you want? And I put, I want a cast iron muse. I want some, the fact that nothing puts me off. I came close to it the past 6 months since the 21st of January. When the new administration came in, I find the deluge of news in the United States, I found that very disturbing. And it was difficult for me to write for a number of months, which is the reason that the current book is, I got it in on the day before the deadline date. And the editor politely pointed out that there are several things that should have been fixed and weren't, which is the reason I have a manuscript up in my hotel room now that I'm working on when I'm not here.
Okay, we've got time for maybe a couple short questions or one more long involved question. Which do you prefer?
What?
3 short, 1 long.
I'm hearing 1 long.
1 long, okay. This one's kind of a difficult one. How do you approach writing characters who are vastly different from you are in some way? Different gender, different ethnicity, different anything like that. Belief system?
For me, I would say this is why I write. This is drilling down into the core of why I became a writer. I often reference Dragonspain. Barbara's probably tired of this story, but I read Dragonspain and I found a character very unlike myself, and someone who was more like my mother than like me. And I read the book and I'm like, oh, this is what it's like to be my mom. I get this, and you laugh, but that was really, when you're a 14-year-old boy getting inside the head of an adult, let alone one of your parents, is a revelatory thing. I'm like, I understand this idea of why, balancing career and family was such a challenge for her. And the desire to become a writer was born out of those books that I read. Barbara, Anne McCaffrey, and Melanie Ron were my first 3 novelists that I read. And it was this desire to figure out how to present characters like they did in this way that made me feel like I understood them. And so my quest over the next 15 years was to learn how to get inside the head of people that I want to understand better, and do a good job of representing how their worldview would be, so that this is how I explore the world. So every character has a part of me and something I want to learn. And the way that I do it is I'm so fortunate. I don't know how you guys did this in the years before the internet, because I broke in 2005. The internet was around. I could go to journals online and I could read people's lived experience, and I could really, figure out from a multitude of people writing about what it's like to live with, say, dissociative identity disorder, or, just what people get wrong. If you ever want to have if you ever want to do this, pick whatever you're writing about and then do a Google search for, what do people get wrong about X in films? What do people get wrong about being a coroner in films? And people will have ranted for you about what the movies get wrong, and what the movies get wrong will tell you what to do right. And then it's a process of getting good beta readers, sending the stories to them. When I wrote Skyward, I was not a fighter pilot. I did all my research. I thought I knew. And then I got 3 fighter pilots, and they're like, you got this so wrong. And I had to do major revisions to get what the G-forces felt like and all of those things. So for me, it's lots of research, lots of listening, but it starts with that curiosity of wanting to understand.
For me, it's a similar process of a lot of talking to people, a certain amount of mental extrapolation, but just, yeah, how do these people fit together in each other's lives?
Relationships. Interesting.
It's all about relationships.
Yeah, that's what stories are.
That's what stories are, is it's all about relationships, either good or bad.
We are who we are because of how we interact with each other.
There we are. I think that's our closing statement.